The first sound I heard when I pulled up to the property was glass breaking. Not the quiet kind, not a wine glass slipping off a counter. A whole pane somewhere inside the house, followed by a woman's voice saying something sharp in French that I didn't catch, and then total silence. I sat in my truck for about 5 seconds with the engine still running, seriously considering backing down that long gravel driveway and pretending I never found the address. But I needed the work. My buddy Gavin had called me 2 days earlier saying a client of his landscaping company needed emergency help at a waterfront estate north of Barrie. Electrical, plumbing, general repairs, the whole list. The regular maintenance crew had quit the week before, all 3 of them on the same day, which should have told me something. He gave me the address and said the client's name was Margot Tessier. I didn't recognize it. Gavin laughed at me over the phone. "You don't watch TV, do you?" I didn't. Not really. He told me she was a filmmaker. Won something at TIFF a couple years back, directed a few things for CBC, and then crossed over into bigger American productions. Had a reputation for being difficult, which in that industry apparently meant she had opinions and didn't pretend otherwise. None of that mattered much to me at the time. What mattered was that the pay was almost double my usual rate and the job was supposed to last a week, maybe 2. I killed the engine and stepped out. The property sat on a rocky slope above a private stretch of Lake Simcoe, hidden from the road by a wall of birch and cedar so thick you could barely see the roofline from the gate. Big place. Not flashy though. No columns or marble nonsense. Just glass, stone, dark wood, and angles that made the whole structure look like it had grown out of the Canadian Shield. A woman came around the side of the house carrying a broom and a dustpan full of broken glass. She was maybe 5'6", dark hair cut blunt at the jaw, wearing a paint-stained sweatshirt 3 sizes too big, and no shoes despite the fact that it was barely 12 degrees outside. She stopped when she saw me. "You're early. You're bleeding." She looked down at her left hand. A thin red line ran from the base of her thumb to her wrist. She seemed annoyed by it, like the cut was a scheduling inconvenience. "It's nothing. A window latch gave out. I tried to catch the pain. With your hand?" It was instinct, not strategy. She shifted the dustpan to her other arm. "You're the one Gavin sent?" "Sawyer. Margot." She looked me over the way you'd look at a tool you weren't sure was the right size. "There's a list on the kitchen island. I wrote it this morning. It's already 2 pages. The house has been falling apart for about 6 weeks and I haven't had time to deal with any of it." She started walking back around the side of the house, then stopped and turned. "Also, the dock is loose on the north side. If you go down there, watch the 3rd plank. It'll drop you straight into the lake." That was my welcome. The list was actually 2.5 pages, handwritten in sharp, slanted print on yellow legal paper. Some of it was standard. A dead outlet in the upstairs study, a sticking patio door, water pooling near the foundation on the east side. Some of it was oddly specific. Light above editing suite flickers at exactly 4 p.m. when the sun hits the west window. Not sure if electrical or existential. Fix whichever. I started with the outlet because it was the easiest win. The house was quiet inside, much quieter than you'd expect for a place that big. No music, no TV, no staff moving around. Just the occasional sound of Margot somewhere deeper in the house. A chair scraping, a drawer opening, the tap running briefly. I found the breaker panel in the basement, traced the circuit, and had the outlet working in about 20 minutes. When I came back upstairs, she was sitting at the kitchen island with a laptop, a mug of something that smelled like it was mostly ginger, and her left hand wrapped in a tea towel that was already spotting through with red. "That needs a proper bandage," I said. "It needs to stop being dramatic," she said without looking up. "The body heals. I have notes due." I opened my kit, pulled out the first aid pouch I keep for job sites, and set it on the counter in front of her. She stared at it for a moment, then at me. "You carry bandages in your tool bag?" "I also carry granola bars and an extra pair of socks. You work outside long enough, you learn." Something shifted in her expression. Not a smile, not exactly. More like she recategorized me in her head. She held out her hand and let me clean the cut and tape it properly. Her fingers were cold. She didn't flinch. "Thank you," she said, and it sounded like it cost her something to say it. I went back to the list. That first day I got through maybe a third of it. The patio door was the worst. The track had corroded from salt air and moisture off the lake, and the rollers were shot. I pulled the whole door off, cleaned everything, replaced the rollers with spares I had in the truck, and rehung it. When it slid clean for the first time, Margot was passing through the living room and paused. She pushed it open, pulled it closed. Open. Closed. Then she looked at me. That door hasn't moved like that in a year and a half. New rollers. A year and a half, Sawyer. She said my name like she was deciding whether to keep it, then she went back to whatever she was doing and I went down to look at the dock. The third plank was worse than she described. It wasn't just loose, it was rotted through. I spent the rest of the afternoon pulling boards, measuring, and making a materials list. When I came back up the hill around 5, the light had gone soft and orange over the lake, and Margot was standing on the back deck with her arms crossed, staring at the water like she was having an argument with it. She heard me and turned. "You're still here. Doc's gonna need lumber. I'll pick it up tomorrow morning." She nodded. There was a pause that lasted a beat too long, and then she said, "Are you hungry?" "I'm fine." That wasn't what I asked. She went inside and came back 10 minutes later with 2 plates. Grilled cheese on sourdough, tomato soup from a carton, and sliced apple. She set one plate on the deck railing near me and sat down with hers on the top step. We ate without talking much. The lake was dead still. A loon called once from somewhere past the point, that long wavering note that sounds like it belongs to a different century. "I forgot what this sounds like," she said quietly. "The loon." The quiet. I've been in LA for 5 months. In Toronto for 3 weeks of post-production in a windowless suite. I came up here to remember what silence actually is, and instead, the house started disintegrating. Houses do that when nobody's in them. People do that too. She said it casually, but something in her voice made me think she wasn't just talking about the house. I finished my food, thanked her, and left. Drove back to my rented place in Aurelia with the windows down and the radio off, thinking about the way she said my name. I came back the next morning with lumber and hardware from the building supply in Oro Medante. Margot was already on the deck with her laptop, but this time there were 2 mugs on the railing. One was clearly for me. I picked it up without saying anything. Coffee. Black, which happened to be how I took it. Could have been a guess, could have been observation. I didn't ask. Could have been observation. The dock took me most of that day and half the next. I pulled every bad plank, sistered the joists that had gone soft, laid new decking, and sealed everything. It was good work, the kind that lets your hands think while your mind goes quiet. Except my mind wasn't quiet. I was aware of Margot in a way that was starting to bother me. Not because she was doing anything. She mostly stayed inside or on the deck, working, taking calls she clearly didn't enjoy, occasionally walking down to the water's edge and standing there like she was waiting for something. It was the details that got to me. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear with her bandaged hand. The way she argued with someone on the phone in a voice that was sharp and precise but never loud. The way she brought me food without asking if I wanted it, like feeding me was just part of the day now. Not a favor, not a gesture, just what happened at noon and again near 5. By the 4th day, I had made serious progress on the list. The dock was done. The foundation drainage was rerouted. I had fixed the editing suite light, which turned out to be a loose connection in the junction box, not existential after all. I was starting on the guest cabin wiring when Margot appeared in the doorway. "Can I watch?" "It's just wiring. I like watching people who know what they're doing. It's rarer than you'd think." She sat on an old wooden chair in the corner and pulled her knees up. For a while she just watched, and I just worked, and neither of us felt the need to turn it into a conversation. That was the thing about her. She didn't fill silence the way most people did. She let it exist. When she finally spoke, it was quiet. The crew that quit. You want to know why? Gavin said they left. They left because a photographer showed up at the gate 3 times in 1 week. Telephoto lens, sitting in a rental car on the shoulder of the road like he belonged there. The crew got nervous. One of them said something to someone, and suddenly there were questions about who was at my house, how often were they staying overnight. It got ugly fast. She pulled the sleeves of her sweatshirt over her hands. They didn't want the attention. I don't blame them. Is that still happening? The photographer? I don't know. Maybe. There was a piece online last month. Some garbage about me hiding away after my last project underperformed. They called it a retreat. She laughed, but it was dry. I'm not retreating. I'm trying to fix a house and finish a script and sleep more than 4 hours. I looked at her. For what it's worth, I don't care who takes pictures of me. You say that now. That conversation changed things, or maybe it just named what had already been changing. I started noticing how careful she was near the windows facing the road, how she never went to the mailbox herself, how she kept the gate locked even during the day, which meant I had to call each morning to get buzzed in. And I noticed how different she was when none of that was pressing on her. Down at the dock, or in the guest cabin, or on the deck after dark when the trees blocked every sightline, she loosened. She made jokes. Dry, weird, specific jokes that caught me off guard every time. One evening I was replacing a light fixture on the back deck and she came out with 2 beers, actual good ones from a brewery in Collingwood, and sat on the railing with her feet dangling. You know what I like about you? She said. This sounds like a trap. You don't perform. Everyone around me performs. My agent performs concern. My producer performs enthusiasm. My ex performed love for about 2 years before I noticed. She took a sip. You just show up and fix things and leave. Is that a compliment? It's the highest one I've got. I should have kept my mouth shut and taken it. Instead I said, I don't always want to leave. She looked at me for a long time. The lake was doing that thing it does at dusk where the surface goes completely flat and the sky doubles. Somewhere down the shore, a screen door banged. That, she said softly, is the part that scares me. I didn't kiss her that night. I thought about it for approximately the entire drive home, but I didn't. The next morning, I showed up and we acted like the conversation hadn't happened, which lasted until about 2 in the afternoon when I was under the guest cabin replacing a section of baseboard heater, and she brought me lunch and sat on the floor beside me and said, I keep thinking about what you said. Which part? The leaving part. I slid out from under the heater. She was closer than I expected. Close enough that I could see a small scar near her left eyebrow, and the fact that her eyes weren't actually brown. They were this dark amber color that only showed in certain light. I shouldn't have said it, I told her. Probably not. Do you want me to take it back? No. I kissed her, or she kissed me. It happened somewhere in the middle, on the floor of a guest cabin that smelled like cedar and old varnish, with a baseboard heater half pulled apart behind us. Not cinematic. Not planned. Just 2 people who had been circling each other for days, finally running out of reasons not to. After that, everything got more complicated and more real at the same time. We were careful. I still arrived in the mornings and left in the evenings, still worked through the list, still kept things professional when the grocery delivery showed up or the internet technician came to fix the router. But in between, in the hours when the property was quiet and the trees sealed us off from the road, something entirely different was happening. Margot would find me wherever I was working and stay, not always talking, sometimes just sitting nearby with her laptop or a book, but close, present. Like my company was something she had been rationing and now she'd stopped counting. One afternoon we were in her editing suite, which was a converted loft above the garage with blackout curtains and 3 monitors. She was showing me a rough cut of something she'd been working on, a short film about a lobster fisherman in New Brunswick who hadn't spoken to his daughter in 11 years. It was raw and specific and quietly devastating. This is incredible, I said, and I meant it so completely that she looked startled. Most people say interesting, she said. Interesting is what you say when you don't feel anything. Exactly. She leaned into me then, just her shoulder against mine, and I felt the weight of her exhaustion settle for a second. Like she had been holding herself upright for months, and I happened to be standing in the right spot. Those days had a rhythm. I'd work. She'd write. We'd meet in the kitchen or the deck or the cabin and exist in this pocket of time that felt separate from everything else. She told me about growing up in Trois Rivières, about her mother who painted, about the first film she made at 22 with borrowed equipment and her cousin's car. I told her about growing up in Penetanguishene, about my dad leaving when I was 9, about learning every trade I could, so I'd never have to depend on anyone the way my mother had depended on him. "That's why you carry bandages and granola bars," she said one night. We were on the dock, lying on our backs, looking at more stars than I'd seen in months. "What do you mean? You're always prepared because you decided early that no one else would be." That hit me harder than I expected. I turned my head to look at her, and she was already looking at me. And for a second, the whole enormous sky felt smaller than the space between us. But the outside kept pressing in. A week and a half into my time there, a car I didn't recognize was parked on the road near the gate when I arrived one morning. Dark SUV, tinted windows, pulled onto the gravel shoulder. I slowed down and looked. Nobody visible inside, but the engine was running. When I got up to the house, I mentioned it to Margot. Her face went tight. "What color?" "Black. Tinted." She pulled out her phone and made a call. Short, clipped, mostly listening. When she hung up, she said, "My publicist says there's been chatter online. Someone on a film forum posted that I've been up north for weeks and speculated about why. Is that bad? It's the first step. Chatter becomes a tip. A tip becomes a photographer. A photographer becomes a story." She set her phone face down on the counter, and a story becomes everyone else's property. That afternoon, I moved my truck around to the back of the property where it couldn't be seen from the road. It was a practical decision. It also felt like crossing a line. 2 days later, the line crossed us. I was in the guest cabin with Margot on a rainy Thursday afternoon. We'd been there for maybe an hour, talking, not talking, her feet in my lap while she read script pages, and I sketched out a plan for rebuilding the deck stairs. The rain was heavy on the roof, loud enough to cover most sounds, which is why neither of us heard the car pull up. The knock on the main house door carried faintly through the trees. Then a voice, a woman's voice, calling Margot's name. Margot sat up so fast she knocked the script pages off the couch. "That's Helene." "Who's Helene?" "My producer. She's not supposed to be here until Friday." She was already moving, pulling her hair back, scanning the room like she was checking for evidence. My jacket was on the chair. My boots were by the door. A coffee mug with my name written in Sharpie on the side, a joke from earlier that week, was sitting on the counter in plain view. "Stay here," she said. "Do not come up to the house." She took the mug, shoved it in a cupboard, grabbed her rain jacket from the hook, and walked out into the downpour like she'd been outside the whole time. I stood in the guest cabin with the rain hammering the windows and my heart going so hard I could feel it in my jaw. I listened. Voices from the main house, muffled by distance and weather. Margot's laugh, bright and casual, the version she used when she was managing someone. I couldn't make out words, then footsteps on the gravel path. Coming closer, I moved fast, stepped into the small utility room off the back hallway and pulled the door almost shut, leaving just enough of a gap to hear. The cabin door opened. "This is the guest cabin," Margot was saying. I keep meaning to redo the whole thing, but the quote I got was absurd. 42,000 for a space this size. Highway robbery. "It's charming, though," Helene said. She had one of those voices that sounded like it was permanently evaluating something. Very rustic. Footsteps moved through the main room. A pause. "Someone's been working in here. I have a contractor doing repairs. He's been through every building on the property. Must be nice, having someone handy around." There was something in the way she said it. Not accusation, not yet. Just a door left open. "He's competent," Margot said flatly. "That's all I require." They moved on. I heard them go back outside, voices fading toward the main house. I stayed in that utility room for another 15 minutes, standing between a shelf of old paint cans and a stack of folded drop cloths, breathing as quietly as I could, feeling ridiculous and terrified in equal measure. When Margot finally came back, she closed the cabin door behind her and leaned against it. Her hair was soaked. Her eyes were furious. "She saw your boots." I looked. One boot was still visible beside the door, half behind a box, but not hidden enough. Did she say anything? She didn't have to. Margot pushed off the door and paced the small room. "Helene doesn't say things directly, she files them away and uses them later. That's her entire skill set. What does that mean for us?" She stopped pacing and looked at me. "It means we're not as invisible as we thought." That night, after Helene left, Margot and I sat on the deck in the dark. No lights. The rain had stopped, and the lake was making those small lapping sounds that usually calmed me down but weren't working. Maybe I should stop coming for a few days, I said. No. The speed of it surprised me. If you stop now, it looks like we're hiding something, aren't we? She was quiet for a long time. I'm not ashamed of this, she said finally. I'm ashamed of the world that makes this something I have to manage. 3 days later, an article appeared on one of those Canadian entertainment sites. Not major, not front page, but enough. The headline was something about Margot Tessier's extended retreat sparking curiosity, with a line buried in the third paragraph about a local tradesman seen regularly at the property. No names, no photos, just enough to start a conversation. Margot showed it to me in the kitchen, holding her phone out with her arms straight like the screen might bite her. Local tradesman, I said. That's me, I guess. This is how it starts. This exact format. Vague enough to seem harmless, specific enough that someone with a camera thinks there's a payday. She put the phone down. I've watched it happen to other people. It always starts with something this small. I leaned against the counter. The kitchen smelled like the coffee she always made too strong and the cedar from the new trim I'd installed that morning. Everything in this house smelled like something I was going to miss. What do you want to do? I asked. She looked at me with the most honest expression I had ever seen on anyone. I want to keep you. And I know I can't do that without turning your life into something unrecognizable. That sentence sat between us like a physical thing. 2 days later, my old boss from a marine construction company in Midland called. He'd heard I was between contracts and had a 6-month job building docks and boathouses along Georgian Bay. Good pay, steady hours, crew housing in a cottage near Port Severn. The timing was either perfect or cruel, possibly both. I told Margot that evening. She was in the editing suite, headphones around her neck, the blue light of the monitors making her look like she existed in a different atmosphere. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she pulled the headphones off completely and set them on the desk. Georgian Bay. Yeah. That's not far. No. But it's far enough. I didn't answer that, because we both knew what she meant. Far enough to break the pattern. Far enough to make it stop looking like something. Far enough that neither of us would have to keep standing in utility rooms with our hearts hammering while someone else walked through our space. She stood up and came to where I was leaning in the doorway. She put her hands on my chest, palms flat, fingers spread, like she was memorizing the shape. You're the first person in 2 years who made me feel like a person instead of a project, she said. Margot. Don't make it harder. I'm not trying to. Then let me say this. She took a breath. If this were just about me, I'd ask you to stay. But the second they get a clear photo of us, you become a character in a story you didn't write. They'll find your name. They'll find your family. They'll find something to make it ugly because that's what sells. And I will not be the reason that happens to you. I wanted to argue. I wanted to say I didn't care, that I could handle it, that whatever noise the outside world made couldn't be louder than what I felt standing in this room with her. But I thought about my mom's house in Penetang, about the neighbors, about Gavin getting calls. I thought about how small my life was and how fast something like this could fill every corner of it. She was right. I knew she was right. That's the part that made it unbearable. My last night at the property, we didn't go inside at all. We sat on the dock I had rebuilt, our legs hanging over the edge, the water black and still beneath us. The stars were absurd, the way they always are, that far north of the city, thick enough to make you feel both enormous and completely irrelevant. She leaned into me, and I put my arm around her, and we stayed like that for a long time, watching nothing, saying almost nothing. At some point, she said, I'm going to finish the script. Yeah? It's about a woman who hires someone to fix her house, and he ends up fixing things she didn't know were broken. I smiled into the dark. Sounds familiar. Pure coincidence. Is there a happy ending? She took a breath. There's an honest one. I left the next morning at dawn. She didn't come out to the driveway. I think we'd both agreed without saying it that a goodbye in daylight, standing next to my truck with tool bags and lumber scraps, would have made it feel like something practical, like logistics. And it was never that. I drove south along the lake with the windows down and the air so cold it hurt my teeth. The gate closed behind me, smooth and quiet. The latch I'd repaired clicking shut with the kind of clean sound that meant it would hold for years. About 20 minutes down the highway, my phone buzzed once. A text from a number I hadn't saved but recognized immediately. It said, "The dock is perfect. The house is quieter already. Thank you for fixing everything you could." I pulled over on the shoulder near Hawkstone and sat there for a while with the engine idling and the lake visible through the trees, wide and gray and impossibly still. I typed 3 different replies and deleted all of them. Then I put the phone down and drove. Some things you don't get to keep. You just get to know they were real, and that has to be enough. Even when it isn't.